All right, why don't we open it up, Kitty?
Okay.
And looks like we have 36 screens. Well, I have 11:31, everyone. So why don't we go ahead and start, and we will call the meeting to order, the annual meeting. So I know this is well, good morning, everyone. My name is Yukio Okano. I am your board president, and thank you for coming to our annual meeting today. I know it's a beautiful day outside, and so we should start on time and try to move efficiently through our agenda so we can enjoy the afternoon. So before we start the program, oh, thank you for the agenda. I'm going to ask Reverend Dana to light the chalice and to provide some opening words.
So before I light the chalice and speak a few words, I just invite everyone to arrive, take, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 deep breaths. We've crossed several thresholds this morning, from morning routine into worship space, and from worship space into coffee hour space or a break, just rest space. And then now into the space where we conduct the business of this church together, this church community. We operate under something called congregational polity, which means that the congregation are the ones who decide what happens in the church, how we organize ourselves and what we do. We do that through a democratic process, sometimes by delegating representatives to make decisions for us. That is the board of trustees and also a leadership development committee and some other of our groups who can make those decisions. And sometimes we need to do the work together as one body and practice direct democracy. So I realize I just talked all the way through the time of deep, taking those deep breaths. So I will pause, take 2 or 3 or 4 deep breaths and arrive here for turning your attention to this holy work. And I relight our chalice and share with you these words by Patrick Murphin. We gather as leaders, as servants. We gather as ears and voices. We gather as memory, as hope. We gather as family, as pilgrims. We gather as faithful, as skeptics. We gather as objects, as subjects. We gather as wisdom, as folly. We gather as action, as reflection. We gather as many, as one, as one. We, as we are, we shall be. As we serve, so shall we lead. Let us enter the sacred work of figuring out what we do in this congregation.
Thank you, Reverend Dana. In order to conduct a vote on our business items, we need to have a quorum. According to our bylaws, a quorum is 33% of the church membership. For 2021, the church membership has been certified to the UUA at 219 members. So 33% is 72 members. So I'm going to ask Sylvia Hutchin, our board secretary, to confirm that we have a quorum. So Sylvia?
Kitty, can you tell me how many participants are signed on?
We have 42 participants.
I will correct that. We have 42 screens and
True
some
enough.
have multiple participants. So let me, let's two of us just zip through and count all the extra, the
Reverend
screens with
Dana?
two people.
Reverend
Yep.
Dana, since we have 34 absentee ballots plus the 42, are we not in good shape already?
We're
No,
fine.
my
Great.
math
Thank
is poor.
We're over because we have 41 absentee ballots. And we needed 31 to make a quorum.
31 ballots, you mean?
We needed 31 participants.
72.
Excuse me, participants in that are signed on right now.
In addition to the absentee ballots, we are well over the total with 41 absentee ballots and more than 40 more people here. So
I don't know about other people, but I did an absentee ballot, so mine's void.
I would say the
Yeah.
same thing for Mark and myself. Sorry, we're here and we did absentee ballots.
Yeah, because I wasn't sure if I'd be babysitting.
Right. Well, that's right. So if you voted by absentee ballot, don't vote for when we have our voting in this process. But short of going through every spring and counting, I think we have well above the required number at the moment. So we will go ahead believing that we do have a quorum. So I'd like to make a few opening comments before we go on to the next business item. So annual meetings are important because they are opportunities to look back over the church year and reflect on how we've done. So Reverend Dana will provide a minister's report and I will provide a president's report. Annual meetings are also important because this is how we conduct our church business. And we will be voting on 3 items today. One, approval of the minutes from last year's annual meeting. 2, approval of a budget for 2021-2022, the church year that starts in July. And finally, approval of the slate of nominees for the new church year starting in July. And then Reverend Dana will install the newly elected leadership. And we're talking about leadership for the Board of Trustees, the Leadership Development Committee, and the Endowment Committee. In order to vote, we will be using the polling system that's part of Zoom. And some of you may remember how we did it last year. That's the first year we did this. But we're going to have a practice item in a moment here. But basically, there will be a box appearing on your screen that will allow you to vote. And this is set up so that 2 voters can vote per screen. And it's a little bit hard to explain verbally, but I think when you see the screen, it'll become evident how this works. So Kitty, can you bring up the practice item?
Sure.
There we go. So here's a sample item. And I hope you can all see this on your screen. There's a rectangular box. And actually, we're going to have to scroll down here, but it says 1, member 1, can you see this poll? And you'll see there's a yes and a no. And then there's a member 2. So if you have 2 members in your household and you're watching the same screen, one person can vote as member 1, the other person can vote as member 2. So you see yes, no, and if there's only one of you who's going to vote, under member 2, you'll see not applicable. So you will have to click on that. Now, there are actually 2 questions in this sample item. One is, can you see this poll? And if you scroll down, you will see there's another question. Can you hear this audio? And again, yes, no, and not applicable. Actually, we have a third item. I didn't realize. How many members are using this connection? 1 or 2? So it looks like people are already submitting. So this is a practice item. So
Hey, Yukio,
Yeah.
I just want to interrupt for a moment because I am not seeing the poll. And I think that has to do with me being a co-host of the meeting. I don't need it. But also I'm wondering, we have some other screens that are also still co-hosting. Kent Brinkmeyer, Krista Mendelson, Madeline O'Connor. I don't know if that's you, Yukio.
that's that one, yeah.
Joe and Sylvia, because she's part of this. I'm just wondering, can all of you see? If I'm the only one, see it.
If you are a co-host, you cannot see the poll. You will be able to see the results. The polling is now closed, so I can share the results, and everybody should be able to see that.
Okay, well, when those other people, I don't vote, but when other people who don't get the poll may also want to vote. So
Raise your hand if you have not submitted an absentee ballot and you are a co-host, and I will unco-host you. So if you can use the reactions, that's easiest, but whatever works.
Kitty,
Yeah.
if you unhost us, then we can't record the video, record this.
Oh, that's true. Have you submitted an absentee ballot?
No, we have not.
Okay, I will unco-host you. I am recording it, so it's not necessary that you record it.
Okay, great, thank you.
So is there anyone who has not had the box appear and who has not been able to vote?
Would you anyone like me to relaunch the polling?
Yes,
This
please.
is David. This is David Smith. I could not vote, and it's probably because I'm a co-host.
Yes, would you like me to unco-host you?
Only when we vote.
Yes.
Yeah, Paul
Um,
Carlson probably needs the second one back.
I'm sorry, who said what?
Paul Carlson.
Mm-hmm.
I put, when I was saying yes, I could see it, somehow or other it disappeared, but Alice didn't. Yeah, number 1, can you see it? And I put yes. And then there should be a number 2. What do I do next?
Yes.
Okay, and number 2 can also. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, so that makes sense. David, are you
And
able
then
to
I close
access?
it. Now I close it, is that correct?
Yes, once
Okay,
you've
thanks.
completed it, yes.
Thanks.
David, are you able to see the poll now?
I can see it, but the submit button is not live.
Do you have a next and you've gone all the way through all 5 questions?
Let's see. Let me double check.
You have to answer all the questions before the submit becomes active.
All right, that's probably what it is. Can you hear the audio? Oh, I got it. I got it. You're right. You guided me to the right place.
This is why we do it. Makes it easier for everyone when they know the way to go.
So Katie, I have a question. I'm seeing the results, but I'm not able to vote. Is that because I'm a co-host?
That's correct.
So I don't need to vote, so that's fine. I just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify.
Okay, so
This is Jim. One of the issues I was having was that I didn't realize I needed to click the not applicable for member 2. And that's
Right.
why I couldn't get the submit thing. If you don't have a number 2, you still need to click the not applicable.
That's right. That's right.
good point. Thank you.
Quick question from Paul Carlson again. Should I be seeing something on the screen other than our erstwhile president?
Right now, you should see poll results. I just clicked that after you asked the question. Before that, you were seeing our faithful leader. Yes.
Now, for now, can you hear? Oh, I see. So can you hear? Okay, so, and then does it go on then to the list of the various choices?
Right now, I'm just sharing the poll results. And I
see.
think
Okay.
that it seems like you've kind of got it. So I'm going to stop sharing the results. And we are ready to move on, I think. Yukio,
I have a
Okay.
question. I have a
Yeah,
question.
Kathy?
For the Middletons and me in particular, since we already voted, we just don't do anything. We don't submit or anything. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Just,
Right.
okay, we just leave it and, okay, thanks.
So, I
you.
mean, after a minute or two, then Katie, you would close the voting, right? So then the results would come up. When we do the actual voting, you'll be able to close the voting process.
Yes, and then when I share the results, everybody will see the percentage of answers. I have a view that gives me the actual numbers. So if anybody is interested in actual numbers, let me know. Otherwise, we can just let the percentage ride.
Right.
We need the numbers to record the number of votes.
In that case, I will remember to say it aloud.
Okay. All right. I know it feels a little bit complicated, but I think once we start doing some voting, it'll be a little easier.
So what did we just vote on?
You voted that you could see and hear things.
It was a practice item, more or less.
That's it. Okay, I'm fine.
You're fine.
All right. And Paul Carlson, I just wanted to mention, if you go to your view, you can change it to a different view, so it's not only me that you see. All right, why don't we move on? Our first business item is approval of the minutes from last year's annual meeting.
Did the minister's report happen?
No, we're following the order.
Oh.
We're following the agenda. This is before the minister's report.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. So last year's annual meeting was held on June 14th, 2020. The minutes were sent to everyone as part of the annual meeting packet, which actually got sent out twice, once towards the end of May and once a few days ago. So I know it may feel a little odd that we're approving minutes from a year ago, but are there any comments or corrections from the minutes for last year? You can either, I suppose, raise your hand or use the chat box. Let me see, I should open this up here. And actually, I'm looking at the chat box. David Henkel has a question. Have we made any arrangements for those who may not be sighted to log their vote? And we did consider this, David. We have one member who, or at least one that I'm aware of, who is not sighted. And it turns out that they are not actually a member and not eligible to vote. So we addressed that. Yeah. So thank you for your question. So I'm not seeing any comments or corrections. So we need a motion to approve the minutes from last year's meeting. Would anybody like to? I see Brian's hand up. And we need a second. I see Krista. So we have a first and a second. Any further discussion on the minutes? I'm going to shift over to the other screen. I don't see any hands or any comments. So Kitty, you want to bring up the polling question? So we are now going to vote on approving the minutes from the 2020 annual meeting. And so we have a similar box. Yes, no, abstain for each member. And if there's only one of you voting, click on not applicable for member 2, and then you can submit your vote.
We lost our box. Only one of us voted and then we lost our box, so.
You're both supposed to vote on the same thing that you get. Question 1 is for member 1 and question 2 is for member 2. Is that what you were trying to do?
Yes. Yes. We inadvertently closed the box.
Oh,
Sorry, old ladies are shaky.
no, it's just,
Well, maybe we can take a verbal report for the
yes,
other
we
person.
can take a.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so this is Sheila and Tessa are
Yeah.
casting a vote in favor of approving the minutes?
Yes. Correct.
Okay, so Sylvia, are you noting them?
I need the number.
2 of them. 2 yeses. And we at this point have 82% have voted. Hasn't changed for a little bit, so I'm going to guess that the 7 screens that have not cast votes are ones that are not eligible.
Well, Paul can't vote because I don't see the box anymore.
Oh dear.
Yeah, sorry.
Was it there, Paul, and then it disappeared, or?
Well, when I selected that we were both here, my wife's next to me here. When I did that, it just disappeared.
Okay,
And I got to see our Presidente again.
okay. I'm wondering if maybe it's on a screen behind Yukio. Can you make your
No,
Zoom?
that's Yukio's book selection back there.
What I mean
Should I
is,
switch to gallery view? No.
what kind of device are you on?
Kitty, did you just see Jimmy's suggestion?
No, I didn't.
That, Paul, this is Krista.
Oh,
Hi.
perfect.
Hi.
At the very bottom of your screen, there should be a little menu. And is there one of the menu items that says polls?
On the
Oh,
bottom.
very good, yeah.
Next to participants for me. Between
Yeah, the very
participants
bottom
and
it says
chat.
I think
polling.
that's only for hosts who are hosting the Zoom have polls, but the participants do not.
I
Mhm.
do. I have it.
So I guess it's not just for hosts.
I think that once one has cast the vote, the poll notification goes away. And for people who are voting 2 people on, they have to vote them on the one screen before they submit. They can't go back around.
Okay, so at this point, I'm going to say that
So I
You've
voted
got-
and now I see Yukio again.
yes,
My
that's
guess
what you're
is-
supposed to do. You're supposed to see Yukio once you have cast your votes. I'm now going to share the results. We have 94% in favor from member 1 and 31% from member 2. So that's a total of 40 members altogether approving the vote, approving the minutes, and none against.
So a total of 40 yeses, is that right?
That is correct.
And we,
Excuse me, I think you might need to add those together. It doesn't make sense if that we have a quorum.
no, this is a 40,
I'm sorry.
40 online plus 41 absentee.
Right.
So that makes a total of 81 yeses.
Yeah, and I'm muting myself until it's my time right now.
All right, so we have approved the minutes. I know this is a bit of a process, but I think hopefully it'll get a little easier as we go along. All right, so now we've reached the minister's report. And Reverend Dana, you can go ahead.
Okay, I am unmuting myself because it is my turn. Oh my gosh, lovely to be here with all of you, and thank you to everyone who submitted an absentee ballot and or has arrived here to participate in our congregation. And so my report. Realizing, looking back, that a year ago, it was just beginning to dawn on us that we were just getting the beginning of the inkling about how long this pandemic might disrupt our lives and how our community did community. By this time last year, we had sort of gotten through the emergency startup that we turned on a dime. Yeah, I think we finally decided from a Thursday or a Friday, we realized that we couldn't be together, and we created worship online ever since then. And then we realized we're in this for the long haul, and we did that shifting and adjusting. And there were new efforts that arose and new ways of doing things. We created whole new ministries in the midst of all of this. We created them on the fly, and then we just kept going. Given how well things have turned out, it is hard. Casting your memory back at this time last year, we had just lost a beloved DRE of 3 years and weren't certain what was next. We weren't certain where we were going. We didn't know when we'd get there. And now we have found our way through that. We also, throughout this year, found ways to support and spell each other. I found that, there were moments when myself and others got overwhelmed, got a little cranky about it, downright grumpy about it, in the doldrums, and then back again. And given how many people there are in our community, we kind of just it wove its way together. And when I was overwhelmed, somebody said, hey, how can I help? Or I can do that for you, and vice versa. And we have found our way through this, pulling together. And so, luckily, when one of us was on the stressed out to the terrified part of the continuum, somebody else was in the, hey, this is really kind of fun part of the continuum. And we just kept going over and over again. And we now, a year later, when we had no idea where we were going, we find ourselves still together, having figured out how to create meaningful worship online. I know it doesn't work for everybody. And there are some people who have said, okay, this is fine. In terms of worship, I'm just kind of checking out till we're back together again. And almost every one of those people that I've spoken to has said, yeah, and I'll be back. Don't worry. I just can't do this online thing. It's not working for me. We have also had a caring community just step up and support one another. We continue to have a series of calls made and cards sent and various efforts that we pulled together. We did a whole series of elfing each other. We created Easter egg hunts for families that needed it. We, I'm just remembering, I'm realizing also that we made it through an election. That also now feels far enough in the rearview mirror. And we had a UU the Vote program that pulled new people into the church and gave people a sense of outlet, and then later a sense of accomplishment, because wow, we actually had influence. There is evidence that we actually helped in both Georgia and Arizona. And we kept going. And and now a year later, we find ourselves with a good budget. Yes, it is supported by funds that are coming to us, partly because of this disrupted time in our lives. And our generosity and commitment to the congregation is strong, and heaven knows where we are going and what it'll look like when we're there, but we'll be able to look back a year from now. And I am confident to be able to see that we continue to live into the ministries, into and beyond the ministries that we have created, sustained, and will create in the next year. We also have a new configuration of our staff. One of the things that I have noted is that Jimmy Vasquez, who is our membership coordinator, basically had just started to get his feet on the ground and to go, okay, yeah, I get what I'm doing and what this job is. And we were working together beautifully. And then all of a sudden, boom, we were online. And some of Jimmy's great gifts to us shown that we did things that we didn't know we would find so useful. He is a technological and database wizard, which are great gifts. So he's found his way online. And then one of the parting gifts that Emily Carroll gave to us was the hiring of Fidelity Ballmer as an RE aide, who then became an RE coordinator, and it worked out so well that we're joyfully able to bring her on July 1st as our Director of Religious Education. Carolyn Bjerke has also learned to shift her job on the fly. You know, there are not choirs singing together right now, and yet she has continued to provide us with amazing music throughout all of our worship experiences. And Jennifer Luce is just as steady online, steady and on top of massive details, just as steady online as she ever has been in person, and as really cheerful and helpful. So I have more thank yous, which are the bulk of my report. And one of the things about thank yous is I am very likely to leave somebody out. And if I have left you out, and it is not anything intentional, it has to do with a brain that is holding lots and lots and lots of details and has missed it. But do please let me know if you're feeling left out in any way. I first want to say thank you to the Board of Trustees. Yukio, your first year as president was a little unusual. I know Brian Buck, the previous president, immediate past president, was really, really helpful to you at the beginning and has continued to support you and me and the ministry of the church. And you have really, I feel like you've really found your ground, and it's been a joy to work with you. I also want to especially thank Ron Dallas, who was just your average board trustee, and when asked to step in as our treasurer, when Gary Norris moved unexpectedly, you did it willingly and even joyfully. I think I just see a gleam in your eye, and you're doing it so well. I also especially want to thank Lisa Connolly, Sylvia Hutchins, and Kent Brinkmeyer for years of service. And thank you for serving your church, and then for moving on. Looking forward to what is next for you. Am I forgetting a board member? I don't think I am.
No, I don't think so.
No, because it was Gary. Gary's the one that. Okay, so good. So who?
Xenia Young.
Xenia. Oh yeah, of course. Thank you. Xenia, who is also staying on. Xenia had her first year with us and it was grand. Thank you very much, Kent. Yeah, okay. Also, I want to thank, another group that came together right away and thought maybe their work wouldn't last too long was our reopening team that is led by Brian Buck. And I want to thank him I do not have all their names, so I'm going to let, I know most of them, but Brian, will you please pass on my thanks to them, because they have been brilliant, gathering all the information that keeps kind of flipping and flopping and changing, and where are we now, and what's the most important thing to do, and how do we do this safely and responsibly, and serve our community. And you have been doing a brilliant job at this. We also found, when we were no longer in our building, that it was an interesting safety situation on our mostly empty campus. And so the safety team came together and figured out how to keep us safe, pay really close and good attention to keep our building and our people safe. And we now actually have video surveillance cameras around the church. That was something that, between the safety team and buildings and grounds, we made happen this year. And some of those people are working a little bit in the background. So I want you to know that, I want everyone to know that those things are going on and well, and that we are being held and cared for, and all of the factors are being considered really responsibly by a group of people who are loyal and steadfast and competent, capable, and mostly really good humored through it all. Worship team has been, Kitty Merrill has actually not come to like 2 or 3 or maybe 4 services over the course of the year. She's basically been our rock, as has Brian Fortune, who's also a member of our staff, whose job expanded and changed, and he flipped it right away. I also want to thank Sue Brinkmeyer, Celia Ortenberg, Joe Hutchins, Rob March, Amada Perez, Jerry Mendelson, Krista Mendelson, Andy, Edgar Beltran, Mary Nelson, Neil Ortenberg, who are part of what is now a much bigger team, because we are doing very collaborative worship. And those are magicians and technicians and worship associates. All of this team stepped in and learned to dance with the technology trickster gods, which were at play again today. And they exhibited holy flexibility. And once again, we had each other's backs all the way through. More folks are a little bit in the background that we don't always see their work, are our pastoral associates: Yukio Okano, Madeline Okano, Kent Brinkmeyer, Chris Langabeer, Sylvia Hutchins, and Daryl Marquez. Another team that has been doing amazing work for several years that are really don't necessarily come to the fore, but I do want to especially hold up our personnel team, who this year in particular helped us figure out a way of treating each staff member equitably and by how they get placed on the UUA's recommended salary guidelines. It was really deep work, and it's really helped us. This congregation, I want to say this on behalf of the staff, this congregation really endeavors to be a good employer. And we are grateful to you. And the personnel team are the people who are advocating for that very specifically in specific ways and in general and as a general attitude. So I want to hold up first David Henkel, who is a wizard with Excel. I think he finds using Excel as a spiritual practice for ordering the world. He's been at this for a long time. And also Laura Farr, who has just been steady and wise and sensible and good-humored through this whole time, 2 or 3 years at least as the personnel team. And we have been joined by the amazing and wonderful Shelley Sussman, who is also just brought this wonderful new perspective to us, sensible and wise and clear in wonderful ways. So I don't think I have thanked all of you quite effusively enough in previous years, so I wanted to make certain I did that. And therein ends my report and my thank yous. And again, that's not everybody. We have lots and lots of other groups of people who are staying steady and persevering and being resilient, practicing holy flexibility, and really creating a depth of community that I don't think any one of us imagined might be possible under such circumstances. So it continues to be my honor and ongoing utter delight to serve as the minister of this congregation. 5 years ago, you called me to this ministry, and I am incredibly grateful to you all. And I'm assuming I am now done. I'm hoping, Yukio, that I made your job easier, but if there is any group or thing or person that I didn't quite capture in my report, that between us we'll get the job done as we have been all year. Thank you all.
Well, thank you, Reverend Dana, for a very comprehensive overview of the past year. We've survived a challenging year. COVID hit full force in March of 2020, and the entire 2020-2021 church year has been impacted by the pandemic. And things are looking better, but things are not fully over. But I think we've survived, and there's lots of reasons for optimism. Let me just add a couple of items that maybe were not fully mentioned. We were able to hold a successful auction online, something that we've never done before. And our stewardship team really made possible a creative and successful pledge campaign. Although our church year income was lower, our expenses were even lower. So, and after receiving multiple grants and loans, we may actually come out with a surplus at the end of the year on June 30th. There are so many people to thank for how the church year went, as Reverend Dana mentioned. And what I fully realized this past year is that church governance and ministry are team endeavors. We have wonderful, capable staff, and we have so many wonderful volunteers. Too many volunteers to name all, but I do want to especially recognize a few more people. Brian Buck, our previous board president, has been there to support my transition into the president's role. Brian, you've answered all my many questions, provided advice, and you've always been very encouraging. I want to thank you for all your support. Brian has also chaired the reopening and generosity teams. I do again want to, by name, thank the board members who have served this year. Lisa Connolly served as vice president, Sylvia Hutchins, our secretary, and as Reverend Dana mentioned, Ron Dallas stepped in when Gary Norris had to leave mid-year. He and Debbie moved out of state, and Ron was appointed and took on the role of being treasurer. Kent Brickmeyer and Xenia Young were wonderful help as trustees. So I want to recognize the board members who are leaving, namely Lisa Connolly, Sylvia Hutchins, and Kent Brinkmeyer. And you will soon be receiving, we will somehow deliver to you a card with a little gift of appreciation. So thank you very much. And I also want to take a few moments to thank Reverend Dana. Reverend Dana is the center of our church community, and it's been a privilege and pleasure to work with you, Reverend Dana, this year. I've come to fully appreciate all the work that Reverend Dana does, a lot of which goes on behind the scenes and nobody ever knows about. But a number of us do know about that, and so we really appreciate you. I appreciate your support of me and being in this role. And what I've realized that one of the big things that I think that Reverend Dana provides for us is it's very easy to get caught up in the day-to-day grind of things, but I think Reverend Dana really is able to provide a big picture view of the church and its capacity to transform lives. So I really appreciate her being positive, optimistic, and enthusiastic, and really thinking about what is possible rather than what is limiting. So thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you.
And now I'm going to ask Madeline O'Connell, my partner, to recognize a couple of other people. Madeline?
Thanks, Yukio. Hello, everybody. On behalf of the Leadership Development Committee, we would like to honor Sheila Wilgus and Tessa Weeks for their many years of preparing UU newsletter each month. This newsletter has not only kept us informed about church activities, but it has helped to reinforce our sense of community. As well, for many years, Sheila and Tessa have managed the bagel and coffee table for people to enjoy after the service each Sunday. Along with other kitchen cabinet members, they have made sure that bagels and cream cheese are prepared and served along with hot coffee for all comers. They are there for cleanup as well and to make sure that leftover bagels are bagged and ready to be taken to the Oxnard shelter. We thank them for their important behind the scenes work to connect us to each other and provide warm hospitality each Sunday in Burke Hall. With thanks, the UU Church presents to Sheila and Tessa not only this beautiful handmade card by our board president, can you see? But he also hand calligraphied the message inside. Worked very hard. I hope Yukio won't mind my saying that. And also there'll be a little gift of appreciation inside the card. And
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Madeline. And I want to recognize one more person, and that is David Smith. And I want to thank David for his many years of service and dedication to UUCV. And David has served as chair of the Finance Committee, I believe, for the last 8 years. And he's going to be stepping down from this role. But David has gone beyond the call of duty to help keep UUCV finances stable and to help the church thrive. And not only has David helped shape the budget each year, during this difficult pandemic year, he's worked with the generosity team to search out grants and help apply for the grants that will enable UUCV to continue its mission and work in the community. So David, I want to present a couple of things to you. First of all, I've learned that you enjoy wine. So we have it's a little bit hard to see, but this is a really pretty wine glass, and we have it engraved. On one side there, I know it's hard to see, I'm not holding this up very well. There's a chalice engraved in the glass. I don't know if you can see it very well. And on the other side, we have an engraving that says, to David Smith, with gratitude for your dedication to UUCV and today's date. So we will somehow deliver this to you, David. And also, a secret admirer told us that you especially enjoy, now, I'm not a wine drinker, this is something called Pinot Grigio. I don't know if I'm saying it right. So here's a bottle for you, and we will deliver the wine glass and the bottle to you.
Yukio, may I just pop back in for a moment? Because I knew that this was coming for David. And I did have a note about the Finance Committee, who also, I wanted to thank Claudia Silverman, Todd Collard, Jim Waldron, and Mark Gale for being steady support to David. And David, you know, Sheila and Tessa and David, you have been extraordinary extraordinarily dedicated to this congregation for decades. And we don't do it for the glory. And yet I just want you to know that people notice. We have noticed. And we are grateful, all of us. So thank you, all of you.
So our next item on the agenda is actually to talk about the 2021-2022 budget. And David is going to actually present kind of a summary of the budget. Many of you probably came to our congregational conversation a few weeks ago where we went over the budget, but today's the day that we actually are going to vote on it. So David is going to make a short presentation, and we're asking that if you have questions, we'll address them after David's presentation, but you can ask questions by chat or using the raising your hands feature, or if you raise your hands, we'll spot you. So David, you want to go ahead?
Thank you. And I will say that I'm not leaving the finance committee. I'm just not going to be the chair. And it has been extremely valuable for me to work with Yukio and Brian Buck and Reverend Dana in these last few years when it took so much coordination of the things we're doing. I want to thank you, everyone who's here to help make the quorum. I remember from participating in what was called the Women's March shortly after the election of that other guy, a little over 4 years ago. On that march, I learned the call and response, and it came to mind as I was thinking about this morning, and I liked it very much. It was, what does democracy look like? And the response is from all of us, this is what democracy looks like. We're doing it here together right now during a Zoom meeting. And you're hearing so many names, I think, because we all know how important each of us is, and that while we're doing our own part, that other people are doing other things as well. So that's, I think that's the context of today's meeting. I ask myself too, why is constructing a budget for this church every year not a simple, perfunctory process? It is often for a business, but it has not been for this church. And my answer is, about 10 years ago, we chose to be bold and not complacent about what we do for our members, for our employees, and for our community, and for our larger community. We choose to give away our offerings rather than allocate them for our own needs. The generosity is abundant. The budget is successful this year because of you. And I'm looking at you, all of the people who contribute, who make donations, the ever-growing number of people who come to 2 congregational conversations on finance each year and give other people working on the budget input for what do we need and what do we want to change. And the significant changes this year are that we balanced our budget because the county government, the federal government, and the Spirit Level Foundation gave us grants. Specific people that have not been mentioned so far that helped make this a successful budget are the generosity team. I sometimes call them the cookie crew. And Brian Buck and Keith and Mary Kay Lambert, Keith Cook, Mary Kay Lambert, Celia Ortenberg, and Don Henniger are important to this budget being successful. If you asked me, how are we going to do a campaign, an annual campaign, I would have had absolutely no idea what to do. And it shouldn't be done on Zoom, but they found a way to do it. And our members, our donors, all of the rest of you stepped up, renewed your pledges or let them roll forward, or enough people increased them to make up a significant amount of what went down and when the first 4 months of COVID hit and everyone was disturbed and not certain of their next steps. And the members that I was going to mention on the Finance Committee, Reverend Dana already did mention them. And I will say that special thanks to Mark Gale and Jim Waldron, because they will not be in the Finance Committee, and they've been on it probably as long as I have, as long as I can remember being on the Finance Committee. Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Mark, for the help that you've given. It's very important. And for those of you who don't know, our board president has attended every Finance Committee meeting so far and improved communication so that it doesn't require a report or someone else telling him. So when he goes to the board, he knows what the Finance Committee did. And it is important that Reverend Dana is also in the Finance Committee meetings, especially when it comes to discussions relating to personnel and programs. And you already thanked, I had a lot of people to thank, but they include the board, and because they look at the budget the last, they get it presented just before it's ready to come to you here today for a vote. So thank you, Yukio, and all of the members of the board for doing your part of the budget construction. I will now share my screen and pick up the short version of the budget. And if you have questions, hold them until I get through this page. And then if I'll move to the main budget, but I'll wait. You may not have questions about the main budget, or you may, but I don't want to preclude someone asking a question. We won't go through line by line, but when I presented the budget to the various, to the Finance Committee several times, you will see when I turn to the main page that there have been 17 versions of the budget since last January. And so it gets changed a lot. The main part of it, and I'll show you by clicking on what I'm talking about. This is a summary. The salary increases in the budget for our employees reflect the UUA guidelines from the information that the personnel team gave the Finance Committee. There are no COLAs for this year, but I don't consider that a negative because we brought our employees up to what other people are being paid for their job descriptions in places where it costs as much to live as it does in Ventura County. So four employees got increased pay rates, including our minister, who hasn't had one, I think, in 5 years, and she said she's been here for 5 years. And we will have one new part-time sexton. I misread this when I first saw it, and someone sent me a note and I misread it. I thought they said sexting or texting, sexting, you know, that's what I thought they said. So here's where we are. The pledges are at $353,000, and they dropped during the year to 326,000 because of COVID and the recession. And so our pledge base dropped significantly, even more than that. This is, you'll see in a minute, it's $27,000 lower than projected for last year. But because of the Generosity Team's campaign, we picked up about 7% from the low point, and we have 352,000 of pledges. We have other income. You heard about the auction, and so the total income is just under 400,000. You can see that 362,000 is for our staff. Our staff does so much work for us. It is not the first place to cut if we have to cut. It is the last place that we want to cut. And we were allowed by this budget to not be able to do that. The total expenses are about 500,000. And this is just like every budget I've done in January for probably 8 years, 3 years before Reverend Dana, and then the 5 years that when we start to look at the budget in January, we have a huge hole. In the early years, I got really upset constantly, but after having to do this every single year, it's simply been a part of the process. But we work ourselves out of the hole. Our generosity comes to fruition. Sometimes government grants come into fruition, and we're able to sustain a bold face that also helps the greater community. The extra money is that we got a $5,000 grant from the county of Ventura, and we haven't received it yet, but we should. And they say we'll get another $5,000 grant, but they hadn't notified us of that. This grant's been approved. The second one from them for 5,000 has not. Without doing anything other than writing an email to the Spirit Level Foundation, they sent us $12,740. And with doing quite a bit as it says in my budget preamble, with help from David Hinkle, and especially on the second time from Camilla Johnson, we got our grant in, we got our grant approved it, and we got more than before because we were able to include all of our salaries in the second grant. So we got $60,000. So this looks easy, looks simple. The short view looks like, oh, well, that looks great. We have a slight deficit, $21,000, which is about 4% of the total expenses, which is nothing. Reality can bring us plus or minus 4% from where we think we're going to be. So this is a successful budget, and we will get through the first post-COVID year. I hope it becomes known as that for the United States, or for our church at least. It's not that for the world, I'm aware. I'll pause here for any questions about this overview. Okay, I will move to the conclusion of the detailed budget. And you will see the same thing happening here, short of the extraordinary money. We have, again, we started like 8 years ago with $105,000 looking at the next year's budget coming in that we weren't going to have. And we have, I guess, been bobbing and weaving every year since to come out without having to make really strong cuts in in our robust programs and in the assistance we get and the wages we pay our employees. So down here is a footnote, because we made some cuts in the current year budget, and we might have to in the next year, and we made them last year, or the current year budget, in the sabbatical and in the major maintenance fund. And if June 30th, which is just ahead 2 weeks, if we are over and we have a surplus before we close the books for June 30, we will put money back into the additional money into the minister's sabbatical fund, which doesn't go to her, it goes to pay for a minister. And after 5 years, it's probably not too far away from a needed sabbatical. And the major maintenance, we cut back and we can restore some if there's money left over for this year. And our intent is to have those funded adequately, fully for next year. I'll pause here now to see if anyone wants me to go through or even peruse more of the detailed budget. If they do, I'll proceed. If not, we'll go to a vote on the budget. But don't be hesitant if you want to look at something or you want to look at the income streams. The major things Yukio told you about, three major things Yukio told you about. Two of them he did and one I did. One of them is that, and he said this, our income dropped because of the uncertainty and the recession and the fear of COVID and what was coming. And our expenses went down because we weren't in our sanctuary, we weren't in Brig Hall. We finally got a really low electric bill because we didn't have to pay for a big standby fee. And our committees did not use the funds because they weren't meeting and going and spending the money. So the drop in the income on our current year budget is just about matches this year's drop in expenses because we were not doing things we normally do. So there probably will be a surplus June 30th of this year, and we'll be able to restore those funds. The fact that the pledges did drop, I've addressed that, but we will still have to address it again, and we'll have an annual campaign fund and in the next year, and we will also have an auction or maybe a variation of it for next year. So the board recommends the passing of this budget, and I am available to answer any further questions or to show more of the detailed budget if requested.
In the chat box, well, thank you, David, for the presentation. In the chat box, David Henkel is asking a question, should the date in the footnote be June 30th, 2021? And I believe he's correct. Is that right? Regarding the putting
no,
funds back.
this is the note for the next year's budget, but we had a similar note in last year's.
That's right. I think we voted on it.
So that's confusing because I spoke about the current year budget, but it's true for both. If there's money, there was a note on the current year budget. So we will do that June 30th of this year. And if there's money available at the end of next year, we will restore it. And we did move, let me go up to major maintenance because we did move it from 2,500 to 5,000 this year. So there was an increase to major maintenance as well.
But David, this is Jim. I have a question that's a little bit arcane, but since you've just spoken about the sabbatical budget and the major maintenance, we put into our budget these monies that are basically going into savings. And now that our fair share ask from the UUA is based on our budget, have we confirmed that when we start spending that sabbatical budget, we're not going to be paying for it a second time, or major maintenance for that matter?
No, I'll have to inform Jennifer and Camilla on the case of major maintenance, but in the line for just a second as I find the right category. Okay, here is the buildings and grounds part. Oh, I stand corrected. It's 4,500 for next year. It's not.
That's routine maintenance. That's not major.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. It's further down. You can see this is very long, so let me go up. Thank you very much, Linda. This is the appropriate line for that. And the second question from Jim is further down into our participation. Supporting our movement. And it was for the current year, 23,135. And for next year, it's 24. 500, and both of those require me to do something to make sure they get started by July 1. And this is the 26,891 is, according to the UUA formula, what are are my Facebook notes showing up? I just got a notification. I wondered if it showed up on the screen, but anyway, 26,891 is what we would have paid if we did that. And we compromised saying, well, it'll take a couple of years before we get up to our full share, but we didn't want to leave it the same. So I'll make sure. Thank you, Jim. And thank you, Linda. We're not going to change the, yes, we are. We're going to change the amount. And I need to tell Camilla about the major maintenance, and I need to tell Jen starting in July to pay the new amount. So I'll make notes of that and do the follow-up. Thanks for those questions. Those are helpful. I'll pause for other questions. If I go down one place, let's see where I was. Oh, this doesn't show what wasn't spent, but what wasn't spent is just what I said. Team and committee budgets were not spent. We had significantly lower costs for electricity because they used to charge us for the largest amount of people that could show up during a given month. They would charge a monthly fee for standby for that amount. Okay, that's all I have, except for if someone has an additional question.
Okay. I don't see anything in the chat box, and I don't see any raised hands. Hold on.
Thank you very much for your attention and for your vote coming up.
So not seeing any questions or raised hands. We can vote on the budget. And so would anybody like to move? Well, let's get a motion. Would anybody like to move to accept the 2021-2022 budget as published in the annual meeting packet? So do we have a motion? I see Dwayne, is that you? Dwayne Wickham has the motion. Anybody like to second?
I can second that.
Oh, Kitty, okay. So we have a motion and we have a second. So let's go to our voting. And okay, so I see the box appear. So again, as we did last time, we have a member 1 and member 2. So if there are 2 of you, you can vote accordingly or abstain. Or if there's only 1 of you, then click on not applicable for member 2, and then you can submit. So we'll wait a little bit. It looks like 30 or 35 of you have voted. Let's see. There may be a couple of us who have already voted. I've already voted as an absentee. Let's wait a few seconds.
Yukio, I think Barbara and I can't vote because we're still shared screens. So there would be
Right. And I think there are a few of us that are not able to vote. I can't vote either, but I've already voted as an absentee. So I think we can end the poll
David, I have removed your co-host settings, so see if you can go ahead and open your poll and vote now.
Done.
Okay, perfect. I will end polling.
All right, and so our numbers are, let's see, 32 and 11, is that right? 43 yeses.
43
And-
yeses.
And I know that we had 36 from absentee voting, that's 79 yeses, and there were 5 noes in the absentee ballots. So the motion is passed, 79-5. All right. And now we have a third item. Hold on, my notes here. The third item to vote on is our slate of nominees. And let's see, Kitty, are you able to put up that screen?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So we're voting on 3 different slates. And here's the, so I'm just gonna quickly review the slate. So this is for the Board of Trustees. And I am continuing as president, so I'm not on the screen or on the slate. And Celia Young is continuing, so she's not on the slate. So we have, we're voting on 4 people, Peggy Anders, Ron Dallas, Cassie, or 5, I'm sorry. Peggy Anders, Ron Dallas, Cassie Chandra, Rebecca Fassett, and Ray Escobedo. And as we noted earlier, Ron was appointed to take over the remainder of Gary Norris's role as treasurer. And so Ron is on the ballot as treasurer.
All right.
Okay, so shall we look at the other screen, Kitty? And these are the 2 other committees that are on the slate, Leadership Development Committee and the Endowment and Memorial Fund committees. So under Leadership Development, there are basically 2 names on the slate, Gudrun Eastham and Gary Sinek. Madeline O'Connell and Joe Osborne are continuing. And then for the Endowment and Memorial Fund committees, there are 3 people on the slate, Dennis Charles, Kathy Paulson, Charlotte Gilbert, Annette Heck, and Ellen Ball are continuing. All right, so these are the 3 committees that we're going to be voting on. And any questions or any discussion about this? I'm not really able to see. Hold on. Okay, I don't see any questions or either in the chat box or raised hand. So so I'm going to ask for a motion to accept the 2021-2022 slate of nominees as published in the annual meeting packet. Would anybody like to make that motion? Brian. Okay, thank you. And how about a second? Is that you, Amada? Okay, Amada. All right, let's go to our voting. And again, we have the same kind of, so we're voting on all of on all 3 of the committee slates. probably we have all the votes because a few of
Okay.
us are not able to vote. So it looks like 100% saying yes. That looks like a total of, what, 44?
That's what I get to.
Yeah, 44 yeses. And we had 41, I know, by absentee. So that's, what, 85 yeses and no votes. All right, so the motion is passed. All right, we're almost there. I know it's been kind of a long meeting. So the next thing is the installation of our newly elected leadership for the Board of Trustees, Leadership Development Committee, and the Endowment Committee. So Dana, I think you were going to do a group installation.
I am, yes. And so I am just going to ask those people who were just elected to unmute yourselves. And I have a couple of questions to put to you, and then blessing upon to place upon you your wonderful heads. So, so please unmute if you were just elected. And
Thank you.
I ask you this. Do you accept the responsibilities and duties and joys of leadership in your church community?
I do.
I do.
Yes, I do.
Yay. Thank you. And next question, will you faithfully serve this congregation, bringing your gifts and talents, your questions, certainties, and doubts, a willingness to listen and learn and to speak and lead?
I will.
I do.
Yes, I will.
It's lovely to see the speakers come up as you respond. So this is the blessing that I place upon your brows, the mantle that we place upon you. May your leadership be filled with satisfaction and a sense of accomplishment, as well as excitement, fun, and a good measure of humor, always humor. Thank you. Thank you for your willingness to serve a community that we all hold very dear. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Dana. And congratulations to all of you. I look forward to working with all of you. And we're basically at the end of our 2021 annual meeting. And so, Reverend Dana, can I ask you to put in some closing words, and then we'll adjourn the meeting.
Indeed. Are words from Judith Meyer. This is what we do with our faith. Live in this world knowing that we will lose each other. Loving despite the hard bargain it demands of us. Doing what we can so that truth may be safely lived. Measuring our faith by the difference we have made. Building up faith communities to continue on after we are gone. Thank you all for doing the work of this beloved community. Amen. May it be so.
All right. And before we adjourn, I just want to thank Hitty for your help in this meeting, and Reverend Dana and David Smith for your input. And so I think we can officially adjourn. So thank you all for being here.
Yay!